HorsePlayerNow.com's Joe Christopek alongside Caton Bradar. And Caton, on this video episode of Horse Racing Night School, we're going to talk about the men and women that pilot the horses, the jockeys and the drivers. And I've played basketball, baseball, street football, even a little bit of roller hockey, but I'll never know the feeling of what it's like to ride a horse in a race or drive a horse in a race. It's certainly a unique career.
Well, you know, I've been on horses. I've competed in horse shows. I've galloped horses. I've broken young horses on the farm. But I don't think there's anything that compares to the experience the jockeys go through when they have to make those split-second decisions, when they have to get to know a horse and the time it takes to get to the starting gate. They're amazing athletes as well. And I think they're the first people that we blame when something goes wrong in a race, but the last people often that we give the credit to when something goes right.
That's a very good point. And there's a lot of differences and similarities between jockeys and harness drivers, and we'll explore both careers during the course of this video. And Caton, what do you say we get started?
Well, I can't think of a better person to help us with this because Corey Lanerie has been kind of a mainstay in the Midwest. We've seen him riding in Louisiana, up and down the East Coast, and now calls Kentucky home. But Corey, I can't think of a better season or series of seasons that you've had over the last couple of years. It has to have been fun to just experience it.
It has, you know, it's a dream come true. It's what you work for all through your life to get to this point, you know, and to just be like the leading rider anywhere or whatever. And to do it at Churchill on the Kentucky circuit, I thought was just amazing because, you know, it was with the Kentucky Derby. And it just seemed like the Kentucky tracks have always been like the elite league, you know, the best players and stuff, you know, there. So to go there and do that and have the season I've had this year, it's just incredible.
Talk a little about where you come from, your background, how you got involved with horses, because I think your story is similar to quite a few of the top jockeys that we've seen over the last few years.
Yeah, well, you know, I grew up in it in my backyard. My grandparents had a couple of horses that they trained just as a hobby. And then my dad always worked on a farm and trained his own. He's a trainer now back home in Louisiana. And I grew up just, all I ever wanted to be was a jockey. That's how I rode the arm of the chair. I rode the back end of the truck. It's all I was going to do, you know, no matter what. And came up like that, started galloping horses when I was probably like 7 or 8 years old. And during the summer times when I was out of school. So started doing that, and when I was 15, kind of started getting more serious about it, and got my license when I was 16.
Corey, let's talk about the evolution of your career. You've won jockey titles. You did very well in Texas, Louisiana, most recently Churchill Downs. You've had a great career. But in a jockey's mind, your overall goals, I'm guessing, is to ride in the Breeders' Cups and the Kentucky Derbies and the Triple Crown races on a regular basis. How do you transition and know when the timing is right to try to make that move to the next league?
Well, I think jockeys from the time they start, you know, if they could ride in the Breeders' Cup race that year, they would do it. You know, it's just to be able to get that opportunity to come your way, you know, and of course you have to win a lot of races before people will give you that shot. So that's why it doesn't really happen too often for some guys, and some guys it does right away. But I don't think there's a time limit you put to where you want to move to those races. I think whenever you get that chance to get in those races, you take it. You know, you take the ball and go with it. So I rode 20 years and got my first Breeders' Cup out this year.
Now, do you think, though, that racing is a sport where the experience, the fact that you did ride for 20 years gave you a bigger edge, or does it boil down more to the horse? Because you say, you know, there are young riders that get on the right horse at the right time and are riding in these big races that the first opportunity they have. Is there an edge, or does it all boil down to the horse?
I think it mostly boils down to the horse. You know, obviously you might have a little edge with experience over something that may happen in the race. But most of all, it's the horse, you know. And if you're on a good horse, I think 85–90% of the jockeys probably get the job done and win. You know, it's just the opportunity of being on the right horse.
Corey, do you handicap race by race and sit down and try to visualize it in your mind? Do you handicap the other jockeys in the race? And do you try to handicap the racetrack at the same time? There are a lot of variables that can make you successful in addition to your riding skills.
Right. When I read the form every day before I ride, and then the night before, and then the day again. But and I try to just handicap pace. You know, I look to see where my horse is going to be at in the race, and then I look to see who the favorite is, and then where he's going to be. And if I think he's going to be in front of me, well, I'm going to try to follow him, you know, and hope to get a good trip, because he should be moving the fastest at, say, the 8th pole, where I shouldn't get stopped. And if I'm a better horse than him, I can ease around him some way or another and win, you know. But he should be moving the fastest around there. So it's a good horse to follow. And I try to handicap who I'm going to follow or if I'm going to be in front and so forth.
I've heard many people say, though, that what separates jockeys are their abilities to react out of the starting gate when things don't go the way that you've planned.
Right, and saying all that, you can handicap it for 2 days, and when the gates open, it's a whole different story, you know. So you have to be on your own and you know, be able to make quick decisions. And I think to be good, like to be able to make your own decisions, is when you ride for people that have confidence in you and in your decision. You know, and when you ride for some people who say, you know, this horse is the speed of the race, put him in front, and you stumble the first jump, and all of a sudden you're last, and then you don't want to be the blame, so then you have to send him, and you got no shot of winning doing that, you know. So it always helps, and I think that makes a good rider too, is when people have confidence in him and let him do his job.
How much can a jockey help a horse? And by that I mean, what is the difference between the top upper echelon riders and the riders that don't win very many races? Because a lot of times the riders that don't win very many races, a lot of it's because they're not on the livest horse. And the guys that are doing the best and riding 20-25% are on the best horse. How much can a jockey help a horse? And do you feel like there's an opportunity for you to have success aboard horses that maybe are middle of the road?
Well, to answer your question, I think we're always told it takes them, I don't know how long to get a horse ready, and us 2 minutes to mess it up. So, but I think the difference between the jockeys is the really good ones make less mistakes, but they still make mistakes, and then the ones that aren't so good just make a little more mistakes. So, and then once you get to be known as a really good rider, you're most of the time on the best horse, and you don't see the mistakes. The horses overcome it, you know. So, but I think the difference is just the ones at the top make less mistakes.
I want to go back to something you talked about, trainers having confidence in you, and a lot of handicappers will look for trainer-jockey patterns or certain trainers that consistently use certain jockeys. I see that you ride a lot for Dale Romans. There are certain trainers that you ride a lot for wherever they are. Do you feel any added confidence, or do you ride any differently when you're riding for someone like Dale, who you have a relationship with, versus somebody that you don't ride very often for?
Yes, I mean, I think like riding for Dale, if I go out there and he usually don't give many instructions unless there's something that needs to be told about the horse, if he doesn't like the whip or something like that. We'll basically just say good luck, you know, and talk about what we've handicapped maybe and where we think we're going to be. But riding for him is, if something happens out the gates, I think I can make my own decisions. And if it doesn't work out, I won't be fired, you know. He'll give me that opportunity to come back and ride the horse. Whereas when you ride for other people and it might be a one-time deal, you try to do it so perfect because you want to keep them happy and not get fired for the next time that horse runs, where the more perfect you try to be, the worse it is, you know.
And that brings me to my next question. Do you have more confidence in horses that you've ridden before, or does it matter if you get on a horse for the first time and you don't know a lot about that horse? What is the difference in your attitude going into a race in each of those separate occasions?
Not much, you know. I don't think some horses it may make a difference because they have some quirks or something like that, but he might make the lead too early and then you feel like he pulls it up or something. And but basically going out there, it's not the same, but more or less the same, you know. You go out there and you ride your race.
And do you feel like the time that you have, whether it's a horse you know or a horse that you're on for the first time, the time in the post parade, from the time you get on the horse out to the track to the gate, is important for you in learning anything about the horse?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you'll watch me, I'll warm up a horse a lot of times without the pony. And I figure if I can't ride him in the post parade, I can't ride him in the race. So I take him like that, and you can really feel if a horse will lug in or if he's just tough. I get to know him a lot better like that, rather than having the pony holding him, you know. And you can feel their mouth and stuff like that.
Do you feel any more pressure, Corey, riding a 4-to-5 shot than you would riding a 20-to-1 shot? Are you cognizant of the bettors? Are you cognizant of your odds? When you lose on a 4-to-5 shot, do you feel worse than if you lose on an 8-to-1 shot?
Yeah. You know, I feel like when I'm 4-to-5, you know, a lot of times you're supposed to win. So there's a little more added pressure to not mess it up and not cost yourself the race. And when you seem like when you go out there and you're 20-to-1, nobody's really expecting it. So it's in a sense a more calmer feeling. And sometimes I ride my best races when I'm a long shot, you know, because there's no added pressure.
Who Why, chased by Be Fair, Gossip Girl, Stardom Bound is still fourth at the 16th pole. Who Why, hanging tough, but Gossip Girl is running on. Here's the line. Who Why and Corey Lanerie spring the upset to take the Ashland from Gossip Girl, who's home second.
Do you feel like there's something you do better than anything else on a horse or in a particular type of race? Are there types of races that you prefer to ride, or you just want to ride fast horses?
Yeah, I think just be on the best horse no matter what the race is. But I've been told a lot of people like me on the turf, you know, and I thought I was horrible on the turf. But I guess it's because I feel like I'm always kind of in a little bit of traffic, you know, maybe getting stopped here and there, but saving ground, and that's what you got to do on the grass.
I'm going to put a scenario in front of you, Corey, and you're riding in a horse race, and it goes back to what I talked about before about being cognizant about the handicappers and the bettors. If you're on a horse and say the horse is 5-1 or a middle price kind of horse, and you know that horse is getting tired, but you know you also have a chance to run third. There's a lot of bettors out there that have you in their trifecta tickets. But at the same time, as far as the connections go, the owners and the trainers, you don't want to take too much steam out of that horse for the next time. How do you approach those situations?
Well, me, I grew up with my dad, you know, fifth money was great. It paid the feed. So I was always taught to ride, you know, unless I'm out of the money and not going to get a check or run first, second, or third for the bettors. I was always taught I better ride to the wire and, you know, get all I can out of a horse. So, and I have friends that are bettors that talk about other riders that get so frustrated when they get beat out of the superfecta or something. So it's funny, but a lot of times when I come down the lane and I'm fourth and fifth, and he comes into my mind, and I said, well, he might have bet on me, so I better keep riding.
That's awesome.
But I always try to beat the guy next to me.
You mentioned the turf and saving ground, and I have seen that many, many times, even on some kind of tight courses or tougher to ride courses like a Gulfstream Park, that somehow you seem to manage to get to the rail more often than not. What is that? I know we've seen Calvin Burrell was known for that as well, and is there something to the Louisiana riders that come from there that just think rail?
Oh, I think so, and I don't think it was just the riders. I think it was the trainers that we came up under. You know, they had one, his name was Buster Leger, and he was like, you get on the rail and you don't get off, and if you get beat, I'll take the blame. You know, and we were just always taught, go to the rail, go to the rail. You know, it's the shortest way home. And once they preached that in, then I rode for Steve Asmussen for I don't know how long, but, you know, a few years. And his thing is keep going left before you go right. Finish your left before you go right. So just saving ground's been put in my head my whole career, so.
Let's talk about the camaraderie in the jockeys room. When we talk about football, baseball, basketball, hockey, any other major sport, you're not in the same locker room with your competition. And you're friends with a lot of these guys. You guys go to dinner, you guys go out, you know, after the races, and you root for each other. Talk about that balance between the friendships, the camaraderie, and the competition. Well,
To start off with, though, we're mostly acquaintances. We act like we're friends. But when the gates open, it's every man for himself, you know. And but you know, we are a family in there, and we have to take. It's a real dangerous sport, so we have to take care of each other on the other side, you know, where you can't do something intentional to, you know, you can get somebody killed or, you know, hurt really bad. So there is one side of it to where we look out for each other, but then another side, every man for himself, you know.
You talk about the danger element, and I always marvel about how riders are able to be involved in spills where a jock goes down or something really serious does happen, and it seems like while everybody cares and is concerned, they're able to just shake it off and go out and ride the next race. Or riders who have been injured, they come right back, and it's almost as if they, for a lot of them, pick up where they left off. How do you put that kind of fear or the knowledge that at any minute something could go wrong behind you?
Right. I don't think you ever put it behind you right away. You might try to show it that way, you know, and come out, but it's like driving a car, and if you get in a wreck, and the next time you come to that light, you're gonna look before you go, you know, and then after a while, you forget about it, you know, it kind of goes away. So I had, a few years ago, like 2 days in a row, I think I fell. Like, I think it was January 1st and 2nd of like 4 years ago. And it was a month or so where I was like, you know, you're just a little more cautious. It's human, you know. And then now it's, you know, it's just go along, you forget about it.
What about the highs and lows, Corey? Like when you're on a hot streak, like during your run at Churchill, you're going to have highs and lows. You're going to have a string of live horses that you ride where you have the utmost confidence. And then you're going to have stretches where maybe you're not riding as many a day, or maybe you're not riding as many live horses a day. Everyone has a different personality. How do you personally handle the highs and lows of this job you have?
It's hard, you know. When I'm not winning, I can be hard to be around. Not hard to be around, but I get probably a little depressed, you know, a little more quiet, you know. And of course, when you're winning, everybody's on top of the world, and I'm happy. But you've got to balance it, you know. You got to be able to put it behind you and keep smiling and keep going forward, you know, because in this game, you know, it's a big ball and it comes around, you know. It's if you've never been in a slump, you've never done good. So, you know, even when I get where I'm not doing so well, I try to think about that, you know. Well, there's times when I was winning all the races and somebody else was, you know, not doing so good. So you just try to put things in perspective, and you have your health and family's healthy, and go forward. You know, we're a lot fortunate than a lot of people.
What drives you when you go out there? For a lot of people, it would be an awful lot of work. It's early mornings. It's generally 7 days a week. There's very few times where you can really just take off and not worry about missing a mount or missing something, the next good horse. But most of the jocks I know seem to want to do it for as long as they possibly can, and even then some.
Right. You know, it's I hate to get up in the morning, but I do what I got to do. You know, it's a job, and if you want to be successful, you got to do it. You got to show up. But and I'd like to do it for as long as I'm successful, you know. And I don't know where the end is, but I think you see a lot of people coming back out of retirement because people that have never done it don't know the excitement and the feeling of winning a race. You know, so I think the guys like Gary Stevens and Mark Guidry, when they thought, you know, probably from not doing so well, and you get down and you're like, well, you know, I've had enough, I've done my time. And they walk away from it for a year or so, and then that feeling is, you can't explain it, you know, so they come back. So hopefully I don't stop too soon and have to come back, but yeah, just as long as I'm being successful, I want to keep doing it.
Talk a little bit more about that feeling and having horses that you really, really like to ride and that you know are stakes potential young horses with a future, and helping develop those horses and maybe coming out in the morning and working them, and the excited feeling that you have when you get on them in a maiden race and then an allowance race, and to find out what that horse can potentially be.
Yeah, it makes you feel good. You know you've been with that horse from the start, and you take him through his maiden win and come up through a other than or whatever, and then if he goes on to be a really good horse, it's pretty special. You know.
What do you feel in them that tells you that they are going to be special?
I don't know. I guess more kind of like an endurance. You know, the good ones kind of go fast early, and then when you ask them again, they go a little faster and a little faster. And their attitude, you know, I think a good horse is classy, mature, and it doesn't cheapen himself up, you know, and burn his race like in the post parade or something. So you can just, I guess you look for class and endurance.
I have one more question, and then we're going to let Caton wrap it up with you, Corey. We have a lot of horse racing fans in night school that are horse players that like to play the races. From a jockey's perspective, is there any advice that you can give to our audience as far as what they should look for in jockey patterns, or maybe, you know, your agent picking one horse over another? Are there any nuances you can give to the fans and advice as to how they should implement the use of jockeys in their handicapping?
Well, a lot of people see where they'll say like, oh, Corey took off of this horse to ride such and such a horse, and the other horse looks a whole lot better in the form. So they'll go, well, he must know something right here. But it doesn't always work like that, because my agent might have gave this other guy a call, and then say Dale Owens puts one in that's the favorite at the last minute, and my agent can't spin the other guy. You know, he can't get off of the other horse. So he's stuck on that one when he'd really rather be riding this one. So it's a hard line to read, because they don't know that, you know. And I don't know how you could really figure it out and be sure. But a lot of times that happens, and but you can look at, you know, when Pletcher and Johnny Velasquez, you know, get together. Somebody takes off on one and Johnny's on it. It's probably pretty good, you know. Or if Johnny's not on Todd Pletcher's horse, because he knows pretty much where he's going and stuff. So just signs like that, you know, you can do that. But you never really know what the story is.
And if there was anything that you think the fans would want to know or should know about you or about jockeys in general, what would it be?
Well, we all want to win.
I have to make all the decisions. You know, I learned that a long time ago. I had Fernando Toro, and he would give me some input on his hands-on, but at the end of the day, it's just better off if I make the decisions. And I'll ask Joel and the riders that I've had for some, what I call hands-on. What'd you feel? Was he traveling sound? Will he run further? Because sometimes I don't know whether they'll run further, and they have a distinct feeling, yes, he'll go on, no, he won't go on. Maybe he needs turf, but as far as the end of the day, I have to make the decision. Well, I think you got to keep everybody happy. The first person you got to keep happy is the guy that's signing the check. So the jock is the first thing. Then from there, you got to keep people happy. And what I tell people is, when you get better riders, it's harder and harder to keep everyone. You got to ride the best horse first to win the race, but then you might have to keep 2 or 3 or 4 other people happy, and you're dealing with a big ego. You're dealing with a lot of owners that are pulling and tugging. So it's not easy. People think, well, if I had that jock, I could do fine. I had Jerry Bailey for it. Not so much. It's not that way. It doesn't work like that. The lesser riders, you ride for customers. You have them work horses, you know. But as you get into the better riders, it's a lot more of intricate moves and you have to be good with it, good at it. Well, it's funny you say that because I got a great story for you. 2006, I'm in California at some point, and Bobby Franco was riding a kid named Joel Rosario in Northern California. And I said, he had just started riding, and it wasn't too far into the first couple months. I said, who's this kid? You better watch him ride. I said, why is that? Because you might be working for him someday. That's the honest to God truth. So you look for, you know, whether they're comfortable wrangling a horseback, their hands, where they position themselves in a race. Is the guy always on the outside, or does he tuck in to save ground? The next thing for me, which is huge, and I'm fortunate enough with Joel, somebody that can really finish up on one, somebody that really can get in rhythm with a horse, which in California here, Breeders' Cup time, Lafitte said to me in California, and I've been friendly with Lafitte. I almost went to work for him many years ago. You got another good rider, he says. He said, thank you very much, Lafitte. He said, he's the first rider that reminds me of me. And if anybody knows how Lafitte rode, when he got in rhythm with the horse, he really didn't have to hit him because they were running and he was pushing on him and pushing on him. Joel is that kind of rider. So that's the other thing I really look for. And then their demeanor and everything. Are they nice to people? Joel's really nice to people. Just their overall character is huge. Means a lot. There are elite trainers in this game right now. You got your Todds, your Billies, your Chads, Tommy Albatroni to an extent. Those elite trainers and guys that win a lot of races, even if you think one might be slightly better, you better stick with a guy that's winning, because that guy is going to, if he doesn't win that day, he's going to drop, or he's going to do the right thing the next time to win, because they're batting at, 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 4, which that's kind of what you're dealing with. Most of these people are real professional, the trainers and the owners and stuff. They know what they're looking at to a large extent. And with a guy like Joel and the guys that I've been lucky enough to, you don't have to do a whole lot. They can see. I mean, everybody that's paying attention can see that this kid that I'm representing, believe me, he could be the next superstar. He's that good. And if you meet him out here, like after a race, He'll stand there with the trainer and the owner for 10 minutes and explain to them everything. He has a real nice way to him. So my answer would be, you don't have to do a whole lot when they can ride like this, because people watch, gamblers know, owners know, trainers know. Hey, look, the guy can really ride.
Well, part of being an agent, this seems like you're a really good promoter too.
Well, yes. Yes. I try to be.
It's easier for you to promote a quality product, which is what you have.
Yes.
But how much is it of you getting in their ear and telling them these kinds of things that you're telling us, and how much is it of them coming to you saying, your kid can ride, when can we get him started?
You know, you get in people's ears to an extent to take a look or whatever, but at that point, the jock has to kind of sell himself. There's a lot of things I can do, and a lot of people I can put him in with, but if he can't keep himself in there, it doesn't work, you know. So it has a lot to do with me chirping a little bit, me doing things, you know, interviews and stuff like this. But most of all, like, you know, my dad used to say with everything, cream comes to the top. So he's really good, and a really good rider is just, they're going to do well. That's all.
Sometimes there are really good riders who have shown talent on certain circuits, and the minute they try another circuit, especially a track like a Gulfstream, if they haven't been on the big league, so to speak, they just can't cut it. What decisions do you make, or what goes into deciding where you ride and when you make that kind of step up?
Well, he decided to come to the East Coast, and like Shug said to me at one point here a few months ago, wait till he's been on the circuit for a while and he learns how to ride the Saratoga even a little better. He did well, but Belmont, you know, the soft turf, which he's not used to soft turf, and at Belmont and stuff like that. Then here, a little more of a speedy racetrack. Turns are a little quick, you know. As he does that, he gets more and more confidence. He's even going to do better, but you know, it's an adaptation that the rider has to, you know, either they do it or they don't. I started to the racetrack when I was a little kid. My parents were just $2 and $5 bettors. They came on the weekend. I was going to college, and I got to be friendly with Scotty McClellan and Craig, and their fathers had set them up. And I said, you know something, I love the track. I love to be around the track. Why don't I try this? So I kicked around my big break was when I had Fernando Toro in 1980. And he was somebody that was older, established, great guy. And he said, look, this and this means that, and that means this. And no one had ever explained that to me, because you're a horse person. I'm not a horse person at that point, and I didn't know anything. All I knew was that they had saddles on their back. I didn't know anything else. So as that evolved with him, then that kind of, you know, made things easier. School of Hard Knocks. Grab somebody and just start working. That's all you can do. I can't sit down and explain to anybody how to do this. This is not exact science. There's lots of things that don't even make sense, but you just need to work at it. It's just like anything. Work, dig ditches, keep working, come out every day, build your relationships up, build your you know, checks and balances up with observations. It's just, you know, I was not always the best of agents, but I put my dues in, and then I got lucky and I got the right riders, and that's the bottom line. Get somebody that can ride, and you can look a lot better. You can look good. I read somewhere 70% of the population in the world hates what they do. I get up every morning. I absolutely love what I do. I can't wait for the phone to, you know, the phone will start ringing. In the old days, we had to go run everybody down, but now if somebody wants you, but I can't wait to get engaged and my mind start working and trying to figure things out. It's all good for me. And then the afternoons are just, you know, that's the end of the product. That's what you've done. This is the results. That's special, you know.
From the back of a horse to behind a horse, and joining us now, incidentally and ironically, from his car is a driver, harness driver, Marcus Miller. Great to have you on Night School, Marcus. And we're going to start first with, how one becomes a harness driver. I mean, we all get our driver's license at the age of 16, but how do you become a driver of a harness horse? I know you have some family background, but take us through how you got started and how you evolved into a professional.
Yeah, my dad is a trainer, so it's kind of natural for me. I was around the horses since I was a little kid. And I started at the bottom. I was cleaning stalls for him, and then I was a groom for him. And then as I went along, I started to train at the barn, and then I drove a couple at the county fairs and did good enough. He let me drive them in Chicago, which was our home track at the time, and I kind of just grew from there.
When you first started driving a horse, explain to the racing fans out there the difference between driving a horse and maybe driving a car. Obviously, it's much, much different, but what are the nuances that you learn? What do you need to learn? What kind of skills before you go out there professionally in a race?
That's something that's probably hard to put into words. You pretty much, one thing about a horse that versus a car is your car, they're all the same. You know, you turn the wheel left and it goes left. You hit the brake, it slows down. Whereas a horse, they're all a little different. You know, some of them their brakes don't work as good, and some of them are harder to get to go. But you mostly just got to have the horsemanship where you can feel how a horse is. I'm not really sure how to say it exactly, but it's just horses are so different. Every horse is different. There's no two alike.
Now, there's no substitute for experience in any aspect of life, and I noticed some of the upper echelon drivers are guys that are in their 30s and 40s and even in their 50s. You're young at this game. You're new at this game. Do you think that the best skills of a driver are natural? Do you think experience really comes into play? And how much of a game plan do you have when you go into a race, Marcus?
I think it's a big combination. I think you can tell right off the bat when somebody gets behind a horse if they've got the touch for it or not. But then when it comes to actually winning, you know, driving a horse versus winning a race, the experience helps a ton to know where you're at on the racetrack, know where your competition and getting it done. What was the third part of your question?
Well, I mean, just talking about the focus that you have and having a game plan going into the race, how much handicapping of your competition is involved?
Okay, for that, mostly you just kind of got to figure out who's leaving, who's not leaving. It gives you a kind of a plan on where you want to be and what you think the pace of the race will be, if there'll be a lot of speed or not a lot of speed. And then horses that'll carry you all the way to the wire, or ones that you definitely don't want to be behind. But anytime you make too much of a game plan, something changes and you gotta call an audible behind the gate.
Now, we talked about the experienced drivers and how, you know, there's no substitute for that experience on the racetrack. Are there any of the old school drivers that you look up to and say, man, I really love the drive that this guy put on, or I really want to be close to him when I'm in the prime of my career and moving forward and winning, you know, 1,000 races, 2,000 races, 5,000 races like some of these guys have done?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, like just watching Brian Sears drive, it seems like he's never in the wrong spot. And the same goes for like Ron Pierce. Whenever Ron Pierce, if you think he's in a bad spot, then all of a sudden it works out for him just because he knows the way the races go. And I always try to watch the guys who are winning the races and see what they're doing, where they're at, and learning. If you're not learning, then you're doing something wrong.
Now, there are some differences in night-to-night driving when you go from racetrack to racetrack, and the obvious difference is the track size. You have, you know, half-mile ovals, 5/8 ovals, 7/8, a mile. Talk about the differences in driving those kind of tracks and how it'll affect your strategy in a race.
It seems like the shorter the track, the closer to the front you have to be. You know, a half is like all front end, and then the 5/8, it's you're got to be 1, 2, 3, 4 turning for home, or it's tough to get there. And then, you know, like at the Meadowlands, it's still a lot of speed because the horses are so good, but you can come from out of it. You could come from second or third over sometimes if the pace dictates it. You just kind of got to know the track. Each track is a little different, and the easiest way is just watch the replays, and you can tell within 2 or 3 races how the races play out most of the time.
And how does post position play into your overall strategy on the different sized racetracks?
Kind of the same thing. The smaller the racetrack, the more inside you need to draw. Like like Yonkers, a half-mile track, the 7-8 is a killer. It's really tough to win from there. But at the Meadowlands, you see horses win from 8, 9, and 10 all the time. So it always helps to draw inside no matter what. But the bigger the track, the easier you have a chance from the outside.
Now, this is a question the bettors in night school are going to ask Marcus, and it's when you draw the 7 or 8 post on a half-mile track, obviously the talent of your horse has a lot to do with the eventual outcome as well. But are you thinking in the back of your mind, man, it's going to be really, really hard to win this race. I want to just try to get a piece of it. Or are you trying to win every single race regardless of your post position?
I mean, you're always trying to win, but there's certain times when you gotta take into account that the horse is an animal, and if you're in a nearly impossible spot, you know, you gotta kind of take your lumps for sometimes and hope the horse races good and gets as much as he can. And sometimes they'll surprise you too, and that horse will end up popping up and going, you know, the big trip on the outside or something. But if you go out there gunning full speed, you know, you got to be on the front, got to be or something like that, you'll end up with a lot of tired horses and nothing to drive the next week.
Are you cognizant, Marcus, of the odds when you go out onto the racetrack for the post parade as you're nearing the start of the race? Do you look up at the tote board? Do you see I'm 3-5, I'm 5-1, I'm 20-1? And is there more pressure when you drive a favorite and less pressure when you drive a long shot?
I don't think there's more pressure. Most of the time when you're driving a favorite, it's a good thing because they're confident in you, you know, the gamblers. And the public watches a lot of races, and they know what horses are supposed to win, and that's why they're low odds. So I always take into account, and every now and then there'll be a horse that I didn't think figured in a race somebody else is driving, and all of a sudden they're 3-1 on the board, and then you got to take that into account. Maybe they're gonna race a little different than you thought. And same goes for your horse. I mean, if you're 20-1, there's a reason they don't like you, so you can't be quite as aggressive, but mostly you just drive your horse. You drive your horse how you think is the best, and just be aware of the odds.
And there's a part B to this question, which is if you are the 3-5 favorite or 5-1 or 20-1, obviously if you're not winning the race, there are people out there holding exacta tickets, trifecta tickets, superfecta tickets. Are you cognizant of the bettors in a way where, hey, I want to really try for third, or I want to really try for fourth because I could help make somebody's trifecta or superfecta ticket just by giving my all?
I mean, I'm always giving my all because the only way I make money is finishing in the money, and the higher I finish, the more money I make. So it's kind of a win-win for both of us. If it's close for second or third, you're trying to be second, or same thing, fifth or sixth, because if the horse doesn't make any money, then I don't either. So it goes the same way for the gamblers. If I don't hit the board, then I don't make any money, they don't make any money. So you're always trying to finish as high as you can. It's not like, oh, I can't win, it doesn't matter. It's not like that at all. You're always trying to finish as the best by you can.
When you talk about the best drivers in the country, and you've described some of them already and some of their skills, what makes a good driver? What are your top skills at this point of your career, and what are maybe some of the things that you think you can improve on to take your game to the next level?
I mean, a good driver, they know where they're at on the racetrack. They know their competition well, and they're able to keep a horse alive. I think for me right now, when I was in Chicago, I had a lot of success there because I was very patient, and Balmoral, the way it played out there, it rewarded patience because it's such a big track, and the level of horse quality was not quite as high as out here. I think right now I'm working on switching to try and be more aggressive without overdriving. That's something I'm working on. It's tough because I'm at the Poconos most of the time, and it's just go, go, go there. So that's something that I've had to change a lot, and I'm working on that. So there's just a ton of factors, and I'm just trying to grow as a driver just so I can be more successful on the East Coast.
Now, in harness racing, unlike thoroughbred, for the most part, your horses are racing every week, and you drive the same horse in consecutive weeks quite a bit of the time. Talk about the importance of knowing your horse versus getting behind a horse for the first time. What are the importances? How important is it to know that horse going in? And can you just jump behind a horse for the first time and still win, or does that familiarity really become an important factor week to week?
I think it. That's another thing that depends on the horse. the good drivers, that's one of the talents that you're asking about. A good driver can knows just as much about a horse as they're going to know in the post parade as they do after the race. It seems like, like a really good driver, they hop on, they know just how a horse is right away. Once you know a horse, I mean, then you can the main thing you can do then is tell, like, is he a little better than last week? Is he a little worse than last week? And then play that into your plan accordingly. Like, oh, last week he was a little sore. Today he's very sound. We're gonna, give him a little more of a shot today, or something like that. But it's just, there's also you'll see the odd horse where once you get to know them too well, then they kind of figure out your tricks too, and you got to be able to change that as well.
What about driving young horses? Is there a difference between driving that 7-year-old gelding who has 100 career starts and driving that 2-year-old that has only raced in qualifiers or only has a couple of starts under their belt? Is there a certain degree, Marcus, of teaching these horses how to learn lessons and become a better racehorse moving forward? And is that equal to trying to win that race on that day?
Yeah, I love driving young horses. I would rather drive the young horses than the claimers, but because you don't know exactly what you have yet, and the horse doesn't know exactly what he can do, so it's just kind of like there's a lot of surprises that come along the way, or something like that. But if you want to race a horse all summer long, you got to teach him how to race, and that means passing horses. And you always want to win. Sometimes, if you've got a horse that's making his first start and he's racing against horses that have been racing, your best shot might be close to the front, but you're just gonna tear a horse up doing that. So you kind of gotta hope that he can close up stronger or whatever. But you have to teach a young horse how to race, and if you do that, you'll end up with a lot better horse than if you just are gunning for the win right off the bat. But at the same time, I mean, you have to make an effort to win the race too. So there's kind of a fine balance there. It's a tough one to say.
Now, in night school, we pride ourselves on being able to pick winners and giving our fans the kind of advice that they would need and things to look for in order to be more successful playing the races. Are there signs that fans can look for, Marcus, in the warm-up before a race to see if a horse is ready to go, if a driver's confident in that horse that night? Are there any visual signs that fans can look for that can help put them on more winners?
Yeah, the more post parades and score downs that you watch, I think the better handle you'll get on it. Because some horses always look bad going slow, and some horses always look good. But if you watch a horse from week to week, you can kind of get the same feel that the driver's getting. If he's a little sound or a little straighter, especially most horses, you'll see they're in the post parade, they go slow most of the time, and then they'll brush through one turn. And if they're straight and they look sound, they're carrying their head even, they're not like sideways or anything, that's usually a good sign that horse is ready to race well that night.
All right, earlier in this video, we talked to a jockey agent. Now, what the fans need to learn and realize is drivers don't really have agents. You're pretty much your own agent. Talk to the racing fans about how you go about booking your drives and the relationships you have to build with certain trainers in order to be successful.
You basically just have to be on top of when they draw. If you're racing at a lot of different places, you got to know when they draw and when the driver's changes are due, and it's a lot of phone calls and stuff. But as far as with trainers, the trainer picks you to drive, and if you have more than one, then you have to pick the best horse. I always try to take the horse that I think has the best shot to win, but also you got to, if there's one guy, he's got 1 or 2 horses, and then another trainer that's got a barn full of 40 or 50, you kind of got to take that into consideration too. But you always got to try to take the horse that can win, because nobody remembers who's second or third. They always remember who's winning.
One final question for you, Marcus. If you were to give any piece of advice to harness racing handicappers out there, or maybe people that are fans of thoroughbred racing who are curious about harness racing, what are some of the things that they should look for in a track program to help put them on winners in harness races? Is it a natural progression? Is it consistency? Is it knowing the size of the track versus the post position? Some of the things we talked about earlier. What are a couple pointers you could give people?
I wouldn't say I'm a very good handicapper, but I always look horse that can close strong. It seems like if they've been closing up well, especially in the in the races with younger horses, you know, the stakes races early and the hours of 1, hours of 2. If they're showing quarters in 26 or 27, you know, for the trotters or something, then it seems like they're usually sharp and ready to go and sitting on a big effort.
All right, well, that's been our interview with driver Marcus Miller. Marcus, we thank you for your time, and we wish you the best of luck on the East Coast.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Looking for a fun and easy way to learn more about horse racing? Night School, Tuesday nights. Enjoy access to top racing insiders via chat, video, and radio. Night School caters to fans at all levels. Miss a class? Read the archive. Night School, Tuesday nights. See you then.